Elizabeth I might be remembered as the Virgin Queen, the one who never married and ruled England with an iron fist. But what people don't talk about enough is that if you were her enemy, you were pretty much signing your own death warrant. And no, we're not talking about some soft, elegant royal in a silk dress. No sir. She was way more Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones than Sleeping Beauty. Her rule was built on espionage, manipulation, and a healthy dose of paranoia. Trust me, messing with Elizabeth I? Not for the faint of heart. Think about Game of Thrones. How Cersei did anything to stay in power. Or House of Cards, where Frank Underwood played the world like a chessboard. Elizabeth I was on that level. If you crossed her, you weren't just losing a political battle. You were probably losing your head in a very public execution. Hey Discovers, real quick before we dive back in, I've got a small favor to ask. If you love historical curiosities, epic battles, crazy mysteries, and mind-blowing stories that most people don't know about, then hit that subscribe button right now. That way, you won't miss any of our new videos and can keep uncovering insane facts every week. And of course, smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and brings you even more awesome content. Alright, let's jump back into history. If you think espionage is just something from James Bond or Mission Impossible, think again. Elizabeth I wasn't just ruling, she had a spy network so advanced, it would make modern intelligence agencies jealous. At a time when being a woman in power was already a major struggle, she knew she couldn't trust anyone. Enemies were everywhere. Catholics, traitors, Spanish spies, and she wasn't about to let them take her down. So, instead of sitting around waiting for an attack, she built one of the most sophisticated spy networks in history, intercepting secret letters like Sherlock Holmes on steroids. Her agents were basically Tudor-era secret agents, disguises, secret codes, and, of course, top-tier deception. They intercepted messages before the enemy even knew what was happening. Imagine having a spy planted everywhere in the kingdom. It's like Stranger Things, but instead of demogorgons, there's political intrigue and backstabbing. And as for interrogations, let's just say Elizabeth's torture methods weren't exactly gentle. One of the biggest successes. The Mary, Queen of Scots conspiracy in 1586. Mary was seen as the Catholic alternative to Elizabeth, and her supporters were secretly plotting to take the English throne. But Elizabeth's spy chief, Sir Francis Walsingham, her own personal 007, cracked the intercepted letters wide open. And guess what? Those messages didn't just foil the plot, they got Mary executed. A royal assassination attempt, shut down by the first ever British Secret Service. Now, imagine being a queen with a permanent target on your back. And I'm not talking about a figurative target. I mean, people were actively trying to kill her all the time. England was split between Protestants and Catholics, and the King of Spain, Philip II, wasn't exactly subtle about wanting Elizabeth dead. So, if you think forgetting your email password is stressful, imagine running a country while dodging assassins left and right. Elizabeth had to deal with conspiracies from all directions. The Babington Plot, 1586. A plan to kill her and put Mary, Queen of Scots, on the throne. Poison attempts. A regular occurrence. She never ate without having her food tested first, which, honestly, makes you rethink ordering takeout from that shady restaurant. Backstabbing nobles? All the time. People smiled in her face and plotted behind her back. Basically, a medieval version of John Wick, where the monarchy itself was the main villain. Elizabeth didn't just test her food. She also had a very strategic reason for wearing wigs. Yep, those elaborate Tudor wigs weren't just for fashion. If someone tried poisoning her by touching her hair, at least her real head stayed safe. So, if you think being a public figure today is tough because of online haters, try being the most powerful monarch in Europe, with an entire network of conspirators plotting to take you down. So, if you thought Elizabeth I's biggest enemies were all men, guess what? She also had some serious female rivalries going on. And if you think drama between women is just some mean girls' high school thing, you clearly haven't met the Elizabethan court. The intrigues and shady power plays were all too real, and Elizabeth didn't hold back. Mary, Queen of Scots? Oh, she was just the tip of the iceberg. Mary, Queen of Scots, the ultimate threat. Mary had a claim to the English throne, and she was a major problem for Elizabeth. She was Catholic, and a lot of people saw her as a better alternative to Elizabeth's Protestant rule. After multiple conspiracies, Elizabeth finally had enough and sent Mary to the chopping block in 1587. This wasn't just sibling rivalry, it was a battle for power, and only one queen was going to survive. Think Bridgerton, but instead of ballroom dances, there were beheadings. Bess of Hardwicke, the richest woman in England. Another woman Elizabeth had to keep an eye on was Bess of Hardwicke, the wealthiest and most powerful woman in England. She climbed the social ladder by marrying 4 times, which didn't sit well with the Queen. And guess who held on to the power in the end? Not Bess. She knew better than to mess with Elizabeth, because challenging the Queen was like poking a lion. You'd end up as lunch. Lettice Knowles, the woman who married Robert Dudley. And of course, we can't forget Lettice Knowles, the woman who dared to marry Robert Dudley, Elizabeth's favorite guy. The Queen did not take this well. The result? She banished Lettice from court forever, in a drama that could have come straight out of Gossip Girl. And honestly, who could blame Elizabeth? She was just trying to keep her court from turning into a reality show. If you thought Elizabeth I was just a refined, cultured queen who liked wearing fancy dresses, well, it's time to rethink that. She ruled with an iron fist, and neither internal conspiracies nor foreign threats stood in her way. When she wasn't dodging assassination plots, she was fighting an endless war with Spain, dealing with a financial crisis, and executing people left and right like something straight out of Game of Thrones. Elizabeth didn't hesitate to make brutal decisions. She executed countless Catholics, let famine devastate England's countryside, and waged a costly war against Spain that emptied the kingdom's treasury. And that famous Spanish Armada battle? It wasn't just a naval clash, it was a fight for survival. Elizabeth wasn't in the business of making friends. She was there to secure her throne, no matter what. And if you were a traitor or an enemy, well, let's just say you'd probably get to know the sharp end of an executioner's axe. One of her most ruthless decisions? The execution of Mary, Queen of Scots in 1587. Sure, it was a political move, but let's be real. Elizabeth might as well have said, "Challenge me, and you'll end up on the chopping block too." And let's not forget the torture and persecution of suspected traitors. Once Elizabeth decided you were a threat, there was zero chance of escape. If your name ended up on one of her death warrants, your fate was sealed. Oh, and if you thought Elizabeth only focused on domestic affairs, remember Roanoke, England's first failed colony in America. The entire population mysteriously disappeared, leaving behind only the word Croton carved into a tree. If the last kingdom taught us anything, it's that conquering new lands is one thing, holding on to them is another. And Elizabeth? Well, let's just say her colonial ambitions didn't always go as planned. Elizabeth I wasn't just a ruler, she was a master strategist. She built a spy network that would put James Bond to shame, handled conspiracies like a chess grandmaster, and eliminated enemies with a cold-blooded efficiency that even Cersei Lannister would respect. She wasn't trying to be loved, she was trying to stay in power. And she did, at any cost. Was she a brilliant leader or a ruthless tyrant? Well, if you ask her enemies, they'd definitely say she was a tyrant. But let's be honest, if you had a team of spies working for you and the power to execute anyone who got in your way, would you say no to being that powerful? Final question. So, what do you think? Was Elizabeth I a genius leader or a straight-up villain? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your take on this legendary queen. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more wild stories about rulers you definitely wouldn't want to cross.